check.
Welcome to the show.
All right.
We are.
Before you say welcome to the show, we need to do our sound check.
Except that we're live.
We do this every time. I still need to get that calendar put up. Did I show you my calendar?
Mm-mm.
The dog's pooping calendar?
Oh, crying out loud.
I know, it's marvelous, right?
Where would you put it?
I want to wear it on a shirt.
And on today's show, dogs pooping.
I love it. It's each page is a different dog doing its stuff. I know, it's marvelous, right? I love it. Okay. Now we say,
now it's officially welcome to the show.
welcome to the show.
Even though you guys,
It seems quiet.
are we still quiet?
Huh. It's loud for us in our ears.
It's very loud. How we sound now, Miss Laura?
Does that make a difference? Well, we know he is, Jamie.
I'm not convinced that's him. What if it's like one of them rubber suits?
Who, Biden?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
And they just picked either a really good actor or a really bad actor to be in it.
dementia. What was he in? What are we talking about?
Did you see he got lost in a in a hardware store? Did you see that? They were like, "Come here, come here." His handlers.
What is he doing in a hardware store?
He was wandering when he was down in Texas, and he got lost in a hardware store, and you could see that visibly he had no idea where he was. He's like looking around.
Lucky guy gets to meet new people every day,
Yeah, I dig it.
over and over again.
All right,
All right.
tonight's weird news to start us off.
Yeah, we'll kick it off some weird news. But then tonight we're talking about Phil Schneider. We talked about Al Bielek before. Not really dig in. We just dug in on his...
And Phil Schneider has some connections with Al Bielek.
all the connections.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that lends credibility or actually takes back credibility.
I don't know. But I want to dig into his show. It's super interesting.
So,
Super interesting.
it is.
Anyways, yeah. Haven't watched Tucker Carlson in a very long time. I don't watch TV anymore,
Yeah,
like ever.
it's kind of my thing too. I'll catch clips occasionally.
I think the reason I don't watch it is I like the on-demand that I get to watch what I want to watch when I want to watch it with other services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is true that one man's trash can be another man's treasure.
Oh boy, you're gonna tell that story.
Yes. So let's take a trip to southern Thailand. There's a town there called Nakhon Si Thammarat. I'm sure that that's not the appropriate way to say it, but
I'm sure you hit it right on the mark. I think had you let me try first, we'd have found the wrong way.
yeah, there's a 49-year-old that lives there. Siripor Nirman? Anyway.
Sounds legit.
So February 23rd, she's walking on the beach after a rainstorm, and like maybe 500 yards from her home, she discovers this strange lump. It's about 1 foot wide and 2 foot long. The thing resembled a rock, and it had like this off-white color and brown patches on it. The texture was weird, and the lump smelled faintly of fish. Now, I would have went, ew, and stepped over it.
So take it home.
But she didn't just ignore this as some kind of garbage or sea.
Is it a hard chunk?
Well, it's, I don't know if it's hard or semi-squishy. It's a blob shaped. It's this misshapen blob that's got like little it looks like a rock. It's about 15 pounds. She picks the object up, and for whatever reason, this smelly, fishy object, she takes it back to her house. Now, once she got it home, she showed this blob to her neighbors and asked them what they thought it might be. And based on the consistency and the location and the stinky, fishy stench,
Consistency.
they told her that it might be whale vomit.
Is there a
Now-
whale vomit market?
Now,
Are the Chinese gonna grind it up and use it for erectile pill?
Now, whale vomit is also known as ambergris, and it is an incredibly precious commodity. It is widely used as an ingredient in the most expensive perfumes, and apparently the whale's not the only animal that has ambergris, but this
That's like how they use the schmucks in the fancy lotions.
Yeah. So the schmegma or whatever it was. So, okay. Based on the recent market price, this 15-pound hunk of puke is worth $250,000.
I'll be in Oregon next week, folks. Whale watching.
So
I'll be throwing ipecac out in the water.
$250,000. Now, there was in 2020, near this, but not exactly on this same beach,
So
a 220-pound piece of ambergris found that was worth $3.5 million.
I wonder if whales get grossed out if I show them pictures of their mommy and daddy whales making more baby whales.
Now, it is a semi-solid whale puke, is what it is. And I don't know how they decided that this mysterious source would someday become this precious commodity, but they nickname it as floating gold.
Yeah, 15 pounds worth that much. Mm-hmm. I mean, aside from you got to touch it.
The only thing that
How
may be more precious than that is whale poop.
really?
Mm-hmm.
Is it stringy like fish?
I don't know. At any rate, lucky finder, $250,000 worth of whale puke.
Oh man.
There you have it.
Well, ipecac and pictures of whale folks. All right, so tonight, we want to talk about Phil Schneider.
Phil Schneider. Oh, so I wasn't really familiar with him. I'm pretty familiar with Al Bielek from the Philadelphia Experiment.
Yeah, and
And
now
several,
Phil Schneider's dad apparently was a part of that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. So, UFO conspiracy theorists argue that various governments and politicians globally, most especially the officials of Washington, D.C., have been and continues to suppress evidence of extraterrestrial unidentified flying objects and alien visitors. So these conspiracy theories commonly argue that we are in communication with them, cooperation in some, and they just basically say, no, it didn't happen. And that's what takes us to the wondrous world of Phil Schneider.
Well, they think that our government's in cooperation, but that our government allows them to take liberties with the population and
In exchange for
cattle.
things.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's safety, maybe they allow them to for technology or
Yeah.
materials.
Yeah.
So, Phil Schneider was the son of a German couple, Sally Schneider and Otto Oscar Schneider. He was born April 23rd, 1947, in Bethesda. Now, his father had a very controversial military life. He fought on both sides of World War II, As a U-boat captain, he was captured, and then he became involved in the front of military experiments. So it's claimed that he worked on the project of the atomic bomb, the H-bomb, and according to researchers, the Philadelphia experiment. Phil, on the other hand, graduated with an engineering degree and geology degree. And with his family influence having been heavily involved in, military operations, he worked for the government for 17 years. Now, everything I could dig up on him, that's true. 100%.
Yeah.
He had an exemplary military career, and then he went on to work for the government, at places like Dulce, Mexico, and for EG&G and Lockheed and several applications for 17 years. So it's unrefuted. He has a clean record.
So this is Phil.
Phil. Mm-hmm.
So Phil actually did work for these contracting agencies.
Yes.
What about in Groom Lake?
Now, Phil does say that as part of his job being a geological engineer, that it took him to Groom Lake, but he wasn't necessarily contracted to work there. It was just a short stay. So, Schneider helped build 2 military bases in the United States, and the first was at Dulce, New Mexico. He married Cynthia less than a year after they met. Eventually, 1986, and the next year, they had their daughter. Now, Cynthia goes on to say that Phil presented with a severe case of depression and could be abusive. So they divorced in 1990.
So they made it 4 years.
Mm-hmm. And then he left Dulce and moved to Wilsonville, Oregon, where he began to publish a magazine called The Alien Digest. 1993, they released the very last issue. I tried to find it, but it's in the annals of the internet somewhere. But right after they released their last issue, his partner, Rum Rummel, was found dead in the park with a bullet wound to the head.
Yeah, and that was said to be a suicide,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's, obviously not by Phil. Everything that I've seen on him, he says it was a hit.
Yeah, so according to the investigation, the cause of death was suicide. Now, shortly after that, Phil's father passes away, and Phil said that he found letters in his basement that were addressed to him from his dad, telling him all about the Philadelphia experiment and several other things.
Mm. So that's what he's saying, because in another report, he says he told him that on a deathbed, but now it's in letters.
In letters. So in the content of these letters, he goes into confirm the existence of the Philadelphia experiment, and he also says that he was not just involved, but during this experiment, Oscar, his father, was taken on board the ship, and one of his jobs was to isolate the crew members and then later autopsy them as soon as they passed away to identify the cause of death. Now, for those of you who haven't heard our Philadelphia experiment show, it's using Einstein's unified field theory, purportedly, and the ship jumped through time.
Yeah.
And the force field that was around it, or whatever magnetic energy that allowed this to happen, it was said to have melded these crew members into the ship. Yeah,
it's like some of the crew members didn't stay relative to the ship. They moved differently than the ship. So when it popped back into real time, they were like half hanging out of bulkheads, and
Yeah, their legs were actually melted into the deck of the ship, and a lot of them just really, from the reports, just went completely crazy.
mm-hmm.
Like they just, couldn't wrap their heads around it.
What was that guy's name who turned in the reports again? Do you remember off the top of your head?
The one that went by two names.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah, we'll call him Bill Two Names.
Yes, Bill Two Names.
Apparently his story was that when it jumped from, it was like, 1947 into 1986, he jumped off in 86, right?
Mm-hmm. And then he joined another military project.
Another military project that sent him back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a movie about it. Anyway, so with these letters, there was also photographs of UFOs fleeing the mushroom clouds after the A-bomb was dropped. Now, conspiracy theorists and UFO enthusiasts have always said that what first incited contact was our nuclear testing. That it sent out a wave large enough to actually draw the attention of extraterrestrial life.
Mm-hmm.
So after the A-bomb was dropped on Bikini Atoll around 1946, there were UFOs just fleeing through mushroom clouds. So he said that his father actually gave him pictures of that as well. And his dad examined animals and humans after the explosion to the bomb radiation. So after losing his father, he starts to, in his own words, recognize that he may not be working for the good guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's decided at this point that he's going to expose everything he's seen. And by this time, he's pretty messed up. I mean, his story, we'll get into that, but he's pretty messed up. So he's worked 17 years and has decided at this time that he's going to spill his guts. So he starts holding these conferences and he lectures.
Now that's when he joins Al Bielek, right?
On or around there. As he starts doing his lectures, he's got this pretty small audience to begin with. But as he starts to say that, his dad was a part of the Philadelphia experiment, then Al Bielek kind of comes into focus, and Al's like, I worked with your dad.
Yeah.
So, according to him, he's done around 20 lectures in 2 years, and he spoke to about 45,000 people. Now, the things that he covers in these, I've watched a lot of Phil Schneider over the last week. I've probably clocked 30 hours of Phil Schneider in his lectures. He comes across as very
dry.
He's dry, but he's genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, maybe that's the deal, but he does come across as being genuine. But one of the things he talks about is the long-time relationship between aliens and the U.S. government, with the exchange of information between the two sides.
Enter Valiant Thor.
Enter Valiant Thor. Well, yeah, because again, everything is connected with these people. Everything. He says his dad actually was with Valiant Thor on several occasions, and at some of his lectures, he holds up a picture of Valiant Thor and points out that that's his dad sitting right beside him.
Mm-hmm.
So he also talks about the existence of a black budget to the U.S. fund, or a black budget that the U.S. uses to fund top secret projects.
Now, this was in the 90s when he started talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about how the black budget, it was like the double black budget that was paid for with the CIA drug running, which, I mean, it's come out. The CIA did do that. So
well, and then there was that loss of $2.3 trillion that they couldn't account for.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So he also covers these D.U.M.s. So at the time of his very last lecture, he said that there were 137 D.U.M.s. So D.U.M.s are deep underground military bases.
And they're building what?
They were averaging 3 a year.
3 a year, and there was 4 in every state.
Yes.
And he talked about laser liquefaction or something.
Right. So the way that he explained that they would build these was not because people always say that we would see the rock coming out. You would see, dump trucks bringing loads and loads to make these. And he said that what they in fact use is a way to almost liquefy the rock.
And it polishes it at the same time.
And what it does is it forces it out against the sidewalls to create an encasement, so they don't even have to go in and put in cement and all of those things. And that's how he explains how you would never know that it was happening. And he says that they're on average a mile or more below ground.
Yeah, he said the one at Dulce went 2 miles down.
And they are miles and miles and miles long. Runways, train, high-speed rail.
Yeah, train that travels at almost 2 Gs.
Yes, and he said Al Bielek had actually been on one of these trains.
Now,
but he said he had only seen them.
Doesn't 2 Gs, wouldn't that mess up your body pretty bad?
I would think so.
I mean,
you would have to train for it, wouldn't you?
I imagine. I mean, they've,
He says that they're basically underground cities, and they're connected by this high-speed magnetic levitation train. He claims that part of his job as a geological engineer for the military or for the government was to do rock samples and things of that nature. So he would drill down with this liquefaction machine, and he would collect samples to see if it was, a good space to continue on.
To build the underground city.
Right.
Yeah, he said, okay, he was I don't know if this is real, but according to him, he was an aerospace engineer, a mechanical engineer with aeronautics something or another, a geologist, which that I think we've confirmed. And he also stated that he had a top secret clearance with a rhyolite something or another, that there were only 4 of them or 3 of them in the world, and
he only had to answer to 3 people.
They reported directly to the president.
So he covers this treaty, the 1954 Greta Treaty. Now, there's no evidence of this. There's nothing. There's no documents. There's nothing. But the contract basically was to form an alliance between the United States and extraterrestrial life. So it is said that the U.S. government was sworn to secrecy of their presence on Earth. The U.S. government may be furnished with information to advance technology, and that there was a quota set of biological specimens that must be met, including human biology. And when Schneider talks about it, he brings up the fact that, there are 100, right? I mean, right now you could pull up the database, and there are hundreds of thousands of missing people every year.
Yeah.
And he says that it is his point of view, or is his opinion, that they are being taken as part of this treaty because we have a quota for biological specimens, including human biology. We also have a quota of biological candidates to be returned to their point of origin. So that would be your alien abductions, where they're taken. There are things that are done to them, but they are returned.
Taken, diddled, put back.
Yeah. So He says that it also allows them full access to the U.S. government facilities and full DNA activation for all humans.
Okay. What is DNA activation?
I'm guessing he's just talking about the ability to take and utilize DNA.
Might it be a vaccine?
It could be a vaccine. So,
What if the coronavirus vaccine is the aliens' entrance into
I know.
whatever where their ideas are?
It could be. So he got into the black budget, and what he was talking about is when Donald Rumsfeld announced that more than $2 trillion in Pentagon funds had gone missing.
Wasn't that on like September 9th,
Yeah,
2001?
it was the 10th of 2001.
It was the 10th.
The day before. Yeah, it's there are some interesting connections that can be drawn between that and you know.
That was an actual thing. Donald Rumsfeld came on the news, said, we lost a little bit of your money.
And nobody said anything about it because the following morning,
Yeah.
the biggest thing that's ever happened on American soil went down.
Kicked off. Yep.
Yeah. So what Phil Schneider is most famous for is the 1979 Dulce base firefight.
Okay. Now this is the meat and potatoes of the show.
So he was building an addition to the deep underground military facility at Dulce, New Mexico. And he said that as the drill went into a space, he could tell that it was a cavern. So they pulled back, and he says that, they're 2.5 miles deep, and there are 7 levels in this base. There's labs, there's dorm rooms, there's a railroad connection, there's the Los Alamos and spacecraft's entrance. Now, I will tell you that a mere 4 years ago, 100% proven, there is a huge tunnel under Los Alamos.
Really?
They allowed the news crews in to view it, and the news, it's got a train in it.
Really?
So now they say that it was a bomb shelter and this and that, but it had fencing and wires around it for a really long time.
Bomb train shelter
Yes.
to protect the train.
So he says that
Major enthusiast.
he says that what happened was they draw the drill back, and he and a couple other people drop down into this cavern. And when he gets into this cavern, he said it's this great big hole. It's a cave. And he said the first thing that he noticed was the smell. He said it was just horrible smell.
Yeah, he said it was very pungent. Smelled like decaying fish.
Yes.
On a pier.
Yes. He said that it was indiscernibly disgusting smell.
Mm-hmm.
And he also noticed that he calls them the Black Beret. So he says that they're one level above the Green Beret, but there are Black Beret in this cavern. And so immediately he knows that something is off. So as he drops in to get these rock samples and whatever to recommend explosives, he says that he is face to face with 2 large gray aliens.
Now, when he explains these aliens, he said they were like 7 feet tall.
Yes.
So they were really large grays.
Yeah. And the smell and the fact that the Black Beret were in there, what I think he's visibly upset when he retells this story every time, because he said the government knew and they let us go down there anyway. So they get into he gets into an altercation with these grays. They catch him off guard, and he doesn't have military gear, but he has a sidearm. So he shoots 2 of them, and he says they're mortal, they die. But there's another one that kind of comes out of the shadows. And he said at that time, when all of this went down, there were 30 people down there. and 40 more came down after everything got started. And he said all of them got killed. He was the only survivor.
Yeah, he talks about one of those black berets kind of saving his life.
Right, so
sacrificing himself.
yeah, so this black beret puts him back onto the lift and sends it up and then dies. But not before he's injured.
Yeah,
Like,
he gets riddled in the chest.
And not just that, he loses 3 fingers.
Yeah.
And he said that this alien waved his hand in front of his chest and it activated something. And he said it felt like lightning strike. It just filled my whole body and it just laid him wide open. And there are pictures online. I mean, obviously in his lectures, you can see that he's missing 3 fingers on his right hand.
Yes.
And during one of his lectures, they said, well, do you have any scars? And he lifts his shirt and he's covered in scars.
Yeah. And
it's a big, thick scar right down the center of his chest.
Yeah, his chest. And it goes down apparently like down towards his genitalia. So
what he finds out, he's in and out of consciousness, he said. But what he finds out is that when they dropped into this cavern, they had surprised a whole underground base of existing aliens. And he said they've been there for hundreds of years. And they had been living, he said it could even be 1 million years, but he said it was clear to him that they had been living there for a really long time, that he had dropped in on a civilization, so to speak. Now, he says that 66 humans lost their lives in that battle. And in addition to his obvious injuries, the way he explains it is that his chest was laid open like a fish, and his missing fingers. He said that he also developed a pretty aggressive form of cancer. So following this, he went for over a year to receive treatment in radiation isolation. So he talks about several other instances where it's clear to him that the government knows, the government is keeping prisoners in these underground bases, that there are things happening down there that don't follow the Constitution. There's a ton of money being spent, and the government is doing this knowingly. So he also talks about the Star Wars project. Now, the Star Wars program is one thing. It's a strategic defense initiative. It's intended to protect the United States from attack by ballistic strategic nuclear weapons. He says that, in fact, that is a cover, that these missions' intention is to instead take large, unique metals to be processed in outer space, because they can't do this on Earth's surface. And he, in a lot of his lectures, he shows these, chunks of metal.
Yeah, he talks about, he saw a periodic table where the periodic table right now taught in school has 105.
And I think this one had 114 or something.
140 something, or, there was a vast number more of on the periodic table. So
yeah,
he says that those other metals are alien technology.
And not just alien technology, but according to him, the vacuum near outer space is necessary to forge these. So they're taken on these space shuttles to do that. And, he believed that the Star Wars program exists solely to do this. So
yeah, he doesn't have a lot of good things to say about the government.
No. He calls himself a patriot, and he's really driving home this patriot movement that we have to hold our senators and our congressmen accountable, if nothing else, for the money. for the way that the money is obtained, for the way that the money is spent. Because if you can choke that out, he's convinced that we may be able to choke out the programs. But he also says that having had this firefight with the Greys, and now knowing that there are several species living on our planet, that they need to be detained, whether they are benevolent or not. Because he's convinced that, for instance, the AIDS virus, he said that he had received many information, or so much information on this, and high-level clearance documents that stated that the AIDS virus may have actually contained alien DNA. So he said that the threat of them is not as much physical, because they are mortal, as it is biological. That their viruses and the things that they harbor would decimate humankind.
So would the AIDS virus then, instead of being like per se inflicted on the human population on purpose, would it be kind of like what happened with the Native Americans when the Europeans first came over and smallpox ripped through them?
I mean, it could be. He was convinced that it was created in a lab, and that it was released to see what would happen on, broad scale human population. But in fact, that they had taken some viral load, bacteria or actual DNA from these aliens, and that is part of the makeup of the AIDS virus.
Oh, so they're making it. Huh. Makes you wonder what other viruses might have been made with alien DNA.
So as soon as Schneider decided to talk publicly, he knew his life was at risk. And he talks about this in every lecture. And he would always state, I feel directly threatened, and before I am killed, I must reveal this material. If they ever say I committed suicide, you will know I was murdered. And in every single one of these. Now, on January 17th, 1996, he was found dead in his apartment. Cause of death? Suicide. However,
Do go on.
However, if you analyze the crime scene, he had been in there for approximately 8 days. And the photos, you can find them online. We're not going to share them now because they're pretty graphic. But when his body was first discovered, it was some Jehovah's Witnesses. They'd coming around.
Have you heard the good, or
have you got time to talk about
news about
But they apparently either caught a vision of him inside the curtains or could smell him. There's not a lot of information on that, but they contacted the local police to do a well check. The deputy that showed up, I mean, he was in bad shape. He was in bloated cow kind of bad shape. So the deputy
let's talk
just said it's probably a suicide and sent his body to the coroner. Now, when he arrived at the coroner said, wait a minute, he had a rubber tube wrapped 3 times around his neck.
Well,
The coroner said, given the way that it was wrapped, he didn't believe that it was a suicide. And they did actually determine or redetermine his cause of death to be unknown in the years following his death. Now, at the time when his body was found, valuable goods like jewelry and money were there. However, a lot of his personal documents had gone missing. So when his ex-wife, because they'd been divorced for 6 years at this time, he'd only been lecturing for a couple of years.
Yeah, he was real quick onto the scene.
Yeah, so when his ex-wife went to the house, she said that it was clear that his notes and his books and things like that, especially the ones pertaining to his lectures, were not available. They weren't there.
Now,
but
and
the money was, and a lot of the mineral specimens were still there.
I can believe he was an engineer because listening to his lectures is
Yeah.
engineer on parade.
Yeah.
Pretty dry, pretty a lot of numbers thrown out all the time.
Now, his ex-wife was the catalyst between getting, a full autopsy performed. And it was determined that it was a rubber hose that was wrapped around his neck 3 times. And the person who, or the doctor who did the autopsy, collected blood and urine samples and said that they would hold on to them for 12 months. And when his ex-wife requested the samples to be analyzed by an independent lab, because they'd never analyzed them, they said that they were lost. So, now...
It's in that warehouse you see on Indiana Jones next to the Bigfoot hair and Bigfoot scat.
So, Cynthia surmises that it would have been impossible for him to have killed himself that way, given the way that it was wrapped.
Cynthia being his
ex-wife, with his missing fingers and his limited shoulder motion. She was convinced, and I'm sure is still today convinced, that it was not a suicide. And she said, in fact, if he had wanted to kill himself, there were, prescribed medications in the house he could have taken, and he had a 9mm. Why would he choose a rubber hose?
Maybe it's like one of those comedies from the silent era where
Right.
super clumsy person falls, rolls, gets caught, pulls the arm to the chair on accident. The arm of the chair tightens the hose.
Yeah. So other reasons to question the suicide. There was no suicide note found. This was a guy that lectured extensively about the corruption of government. He would have laid it out in a suicide note.
Well, and he also, he talked about the government are building these concentration camps
Right,
for the
prison
populace.
camps.
It when you listen to it, it sounds so nostalgic now because since then we've had Homeland Security and right now the World Health Organization has become a dominant force in our milieu, I suppose. And so it takes you back to listen to it.
It does. And also, the missing items. And he was scheduled to start another lecture tour in January of that year. So, or the following year. So
that's it. Yeah. I don't know. Could it be suicide? Sure. Could it be the accident? Of course. Could it be he was getting too much voice out there?
Now he did say, and he does say in many of his lectures that, in the mere 2 years that he had been, telling his story, he had had 13 attempts on his life. So, it's hard to say.
Yeah. Now that buddy of his was found shot in the woods, right?
Yep, Rummel.
Yeah.
Yep. And his death was quickly ruled, a suicide. But, we've seen that as of recent. That guy had Hillary Clinton's, not Hillary Clinton's, Nancy Pelosi's laptop. Did you see that?
Oh,
he was found in his basement with a gunshot wound to the back of the head.
Really?
And it was described, the scene was described as there was blood on all surfaces of the bedroom, like he'd bounced around in there, and they found no weapon.
And my favorite is still Gary Webb's.
I don't know if I'm familiar with that.
Gary Webb wrote a book called Dark Alliance, and it was the research into the CIA drug running. And he got found, I think, if I remember, it was 2 shotgun blast to the back of the head.
Yeah.
Suicide.
Back of the head. Suicide. Yeah.
So you got to lean your head way back and pull the trigger.
And hook your big toe.
Pull the trigger while you do a good quad stretch.
Yeah.
Twice.
So I don't know what I feel about Phil Schneider. I have to ask myself, what would motivate a guy to, I mean, he was receiving $100,000 a year pension at this point.
Mm-hmm.
What would motivate a guy to tell these kind of stories? How did he actually lose his fingers? How did he get the giant, I mean, I guess all of those could be explained because he was, around some heavy equipment. Maybe he had a heart attack. Now,
well, I'll tell you my feeling. The reason I would give this guy more gravity than some of the others is he's not a part of everything that someone brings up.
yeah,
Some of the others, if someone says
they're a part of everything.
they're like, I was there.
Yeah, it was like 20 years after you died. I went back in time.
They two bears
Yeah.
it, or before you were born, or whatever.
Right.
They two bears it all the time. He had a story that was pretty linear. Now, the part about his father, that part kind of throws me askew, but his father was in the Nazi Navy and then in the U.S. Navy.
And that you can confirm.
Yes.
He was repatriated, following that, but you can confirm that he was actually captured.
And we do know that Operation Paperclip happened. So
Yes.
we do know that our military back in those days was not above the
Back in those days.
mines arm race. Okay. Well, I don't know if they are now. I don't know.
100%. 100%.
Well,
You don't spend 70 years perfecting a program to be like,
I think
used up.
I think one of the big questions with that is it seems like there is no longer either on the upper echelons of science and technology, there's no more such a thing as a citizen of a nation.
True.
Also,
True.
I don't know many nations that necessarily that we can't at least equally compete with on the technological market.
Yeah. Agreed.
When back then, in a lot of aspects, Nazi Germany was so far ahead of everybody else.
That's why we had Paperclip.
Yeah.
That's why we brought him over.
Maybe it was all an evil plan by
Yes.
the reptilian overlords to release the Nazis to do crazy tests because they had no scruples. So
It makes, remember when you were a kid, you said, I'm going to dig to China. It makes me want to start digging, see if I can run into some aliens down there.
I do not want to run into aliens. They wave their hand and blow your chest up.
Yeah. Crazy stuff. It's an,
I don't know.
It's an interesting story. He seems very credible. It almost lends credibility to his story that he's no longer with us because he died pretty shortly after. He started lecturing. His partner died.
Yep. Al
Know,
Bielek is still alive.
Al Bielek.
And I believe, if last time I looked,
David Icke is still alive.
still practicing law.
Yeah.
I think Al Bielek is still a lawyer in like Indiana.
Is it bad to think that, that is the metric that we measure whether or not they're credible is if they have a suicide? I mean, that's pretty sad. But
Yeah.
it happens. And the UFO enthusiasts believe 100% that it was not a suicide, that he in fact was telling his story and that they wanted to shut him up.
Well, it doesn't even have to be about his UFOs for them to want to
Shut him up.
shut him up. I mean, he
Yeah.
might have been stumbling onto like the concentration camp thing, or I mean, we do know that there are D.U.M.s.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how deep they are and how big they are, but there are underground military bases.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's one.
And back when he was talking about this, it was a conspiracy theory.
Well, at Groom Lake, there's one openly and admitted. What's in there? Is it a flying saucer or is it?
We may never know.
Just, test aircraft. But
yeah,
we'll run through some comments. There is some, the show kicked off with some Biden chat. Now, I have not seen what happened with El Presidente today. So, I guess, I don't know what happened with Biden.
Oh.
I should catch the clip.
Yeah. Brent,
Look up Joe Biden's earlobes. People have noticed that they have changed over time. The implication being he's been replaced with it. Could be, but he also looks like he's had a major facelift in the last year.
He doesn't even look like the same person.
Like
side by side, he doesn't even look like the same person.
Really? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, side by side, the earlobes is a good indicator because as we age, there are a couple parts of our facial features that don't necessarily continue to grow, so to speak, but they continue to change. One of them is your earlobes and one of them is your nose.
Well, what if he came into, say, a windfall of a certain amount of money from, I don't know,
Ukraine?
A family business, and he decided to get some faceless surgery? What if his earlobes has always bugged him? What if that was, what he feels held him back from his true designs of doing okay, Betsy's pulled up a picture. All right, let's see.
Notice the dimple in his chin. You think he had that implanted?
Oh, he tossed the dimple and he went for the butt chin.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you, go for the butt chin. Okay, the butt chin, the hairline looks a little different, but he is 100. The dentures are on point. I can't tell what the lighting is. His eye color different?
His eye color is different.
But that could just be a
could be a lighting issue.
lighting thing. Now, it's hard to tell. Anyways, so and then another one, Jamie says he was asked about the military, babbled on about how the military is coming forward and designing new apparel for women. What does that mean? Like, are they going to get a new uniform? Is the uniform going to look better? Because when
yours wasn't stunning.
Well, when I was in, the ladies always complained about how the BDUs made you look. But I will say, the Class A's with the skirt, sharp looking on the ladies. It always looked good. Prior to being asked China and their more masculine approach to things, while here we are making maternity stuff. Oh, is that what they're designing, a new maternity uniform? Because they took a BDU, made it bigger, and took all the pockets off. So it kind of did look weird because it didn't have the breakup that the pockets generally added. And that's how you could tell if it was maternity.
Army fashion with Jared.
But it is true. It's coming out. The Chinese are kind of setting up a part of schooling, masculine education and schooling, make them more manly, deeper voice, and I don't know, what else do guys do? Belch a lot in public and
fart and
scratch
and burp and fart and
yeah. I don't know. I'm sure that classroom would be disgusting, but the Chinese are shooting for a more masculine approach, while at the same time, it seems like our culture for a number of years now has been trying to soften masculinity. I do like
toxic.
I do like this new trend that came out, the super straight trend.
Yeah, with the flag and everything, people are freaking out.
Why are people losing their minds about? I don't know. We need wolves. I'm a
We've
firm
got
believer.
to have a predator.
We need something that eats us again.
Dinosaurs.
Without, it's too easy. It's too easy. Right now, I can pick up my phone and I can have food dropped to my house, and I just sit and spill crumbs on my chest and down my beard.
We are literally months away from being Wall-E, where they're all riding around in their little things, and
yeah, it's way too easy. James,
he's heard that too about Joe Biden.
About Joe Biden, but 1943 he believes was the initiation of the Philadelphia experiment. And James brings up another name that Betsy's going to dig into for us.
William Cooper.
William Cooper.
I'm a little more familiar with him than I was Phil Schneider, and I've heard of the Dulce incident and the all of that, but I'd never really, because I kind of went down this bunny hole with Al Bielek, and you had to wash it off. Al
Bielek, I liked Al Bielek, but he was a part of everything, and he had a crewmate named Barry Soetoro.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so that's always something to remember. Maybe it is forever. And Laura says Men in Black in action. That is right, Men in Black. We need to do a good Men in Black show again.
We do.
We did one on
that could go paranormal,
It does. They like demons. I mean, a lot of people who study Men in Black think that they are demons. A lot of people that study them think that they're aliens that work for the government. A lot of people think that the government hires weirdos.
And I want to remind everyone of a really recent publishment from the Pentagon. The Pentagon now admits, as of February 15th, 2021, that it did testing on wreckage from UFO crash at Roswell. Yeah, it's finally admitted to testing wreckage of UFO crashes, according to the author Anthony Bruggelia, who wrote to the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency.
It's time. We need to do a good Roswell show. I know it's been broken down by everybody, but I think we need to do it.
It has been an admission by the U.S. government that it possesses UFO debris and tested it. It has indeed been recovered. There's a 154-page expose on it that you can find on it's what's the name of that? The Black Box, or there's a website.
Now, here's the next question. Remember, you heard all that talk about how Trump signed into law that all the alien stuff had to be released this year. Is this part of the bleeding out of that?
It could be. I don't think it was meant just for alien stuff.
Well,
I think it was just classified document release, like ad hoc, a whole bunch of it.
Get out ahead.
And I have dug through my fair share of that already.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got the whole website downloaded on my laptop.
Did you figure out old Mr. Musk's true parentage? Was it
I won't out Elon. You know how I feel about him.
A Spock alien and
yeah, Elon's the man. I dig him. If he is an alien, I'm all right with him being an alien.
I still like how he named his kid R2D2.
I like how when people ask him, how do you say it? He's like, well, and then he just says, is it like, you would know that. I love Elon.
Yeah, I dig Elon too. He's
a cool cat.
He's trying some stuff. I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy or what he is, but
he better not be a bad guy.
He's trying.
I've been let down before.
Let down every time. But anyways, thanks for joining us, everyone. Phil Schneider's an interesting guy. You can go watch a lot of his lectures on YouTube. You can sit through them. They're usually an hour long.
There's one on there that I caught bright and early yesterday morning. It's 8.5 hours. If you have an entire work day to
hit it at the gym, stretch the whole week at the gym.
Yeah.
Listening to Phil Schneider. And
he's not fun to listen to, but the information is
he's really
crazy.
Dry. Al Bielek is quite interesting to listen to also. And I know I keep coming back to him, but that's because at every interview I listen to of Phil Schneider ever, Al Bielek seems to be the guy who brings him on stage.
Yeah.
So, and I'd say I like Al Bielek. I mean, you know, he's a lawyer. He's gone blind, and he's throwing it out there. I mean, the guy's running around town with the zipper down.
Yeah, and nobody's got a cooler story.
No. Project Pegasus. Yeah. Project Pegasus is the jam. But thanks for joining us, everyone. We want to throw out there, as per the last show, we're putting together
Oh, yes.
Yes, we're putting together a competition to get the...
It's a free aura reading.
Aura reading.
With Dr. Kimberly McGeorge, who we had on last week.
Yeah, she was on last week. Real interesting show. Fun show.
And I've already got there's been quite a few people that have already subscribed.
Okay.
So if you haven't subscribed, go to the website, thewowpod.com, subscribe, and then go to iTunes and rate and review the show.
Yeah.
And then everyone who does that will be entered into a drawing for an aura reading, and it's going to be mid-month, like next month.
Yeah, it's happening with the 14th of April.
Mm-hmm. So what will happen is we'll basically get with you. We need a current picture to send to her so that she can do a clear aura reading.
Yeah, we'll get with you, tell you what you need to send us. She does aura readings or like a quick personal scan, which I know she had talked about. She did scans on us, but we didn't even cover that because we
got lost in the weeds.
We had too much fun.
Yeah.
But like the personal scan, I think is kind of like you'd think a scan would be. She's going to check you out, see if there's any areas.
I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
As did you. And
she says I'm an old soul, so I don't know how I feel about
you're going to have to drop your cockroach.
No.
Act, your Neanderthal.
Mm-mm.
So
telling you, act.
Yeah. And when you subscribe, that also gives you access to the newsletter, which we're going to be launching to, let you know what upcoming shows we have. Any show notes will go in it, and it also gives you additional content, and it's free.
Yeah, we're making. Yeah, it's free.
We've already got our first show is up there in the subscriber section too.
We do a show once or twice a month whenever the urge hits, where it's going to go just to the subscriber website deal.
Yeah, so go check it out.
Maybe in a couple months they'll be released onto all the regular stuff, but they'll hang out just on the subscriber area for a while.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us. We'll be back next Tuesday, and we'll see you then. We don't have anything planned this weekend, but we'll, when the urge hits and awesome guest comes up, we throw together a good weekend party.
Yeah. Have a great week.
Yes, have a great week.